Hello, this is Niswander, and you're watching the Nowman show. And today I'm here with David Bowie's piano man, Mike Garson. Hello, it's great to see you again.
Likewise.
This is fantastic. So a lot has happened, actually, since we were last in this room together.
Was that about a year?
About a year and a half ago,
Wow.
yeah. Actually, it was almost a month to the day that David passed that we were in here talking.
Oh, I see. So it's a while.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so a lot's been going on, and let's start with talking about what went on in the last year. The David Bowie Celebration concert I attended at the Wiltern, absolutely fantastic. I mean, then you started in London, and you did a show in New York, and then you also went to Sydney and Tokyo, and it was just phenomenal. And what's your looking back at that?
Yeah. Well, we had 7 or 6 great shows, you know.
Yeah.
It was like something you can't do every year, you know, because
Yeah.
it was blown out in a big way. We worked with a producer named Scroat, who wasn't one of the alumni, but he's a guitarist, and he had this vision, and I brought in a bunch of the alumni, and we managed to have some great singers in each country, you know. So for example, in Japan we had a Japanese artist I never heard of that sells out 50,000
Wow.
seats. So he came in and just sang Ziggy Stardust. And in Australia at the Sydney Opera House we had 3 or 4 amazing pop artists from there that, again, we don't know here, but that helped fill the audiences and bring David's music to them through their eyes. We had a wonderful female singer and 2 male singers. When we did the Wilton in Los Angeles, we had, I think, Perry Farrell and
Yeah.
a bunch of people, but Sting was kind of a wild highlight both nights. He was supposed to come just one night. He liked
Yeah.
it so much he came back, and
Wow.
he sang, I think, Lazarus, right?
And he did Black Star
And he
too.
did Black Star.
And he came out with his acoustic guitar and did like this classical thing. And I have to admit, I was sitting there going like, wow. I mean, I saw him play with the Police, you know, because I've seen him online a lot, but I was in awe of the performance. And I think you said something about, I didn't know if I was ever going to see this music played live. And
I think I mentioned that,
Yeah.
and in fact, in rehearsal, when he brought out the acoustic guitar, I actually went over to him and said, "That's a great, cool thing you've done as an introduction on that." I mean, he's a real artist, and
yes.
and he delivered on those 2 songs, which are very hard to sing.
Very hard to sing, yeah, and I have to give credit to you working with the producer there at the show, because you had the string section, you had the brass section, and I think even on that content you had some of the choir, the mini choir in the background there.
Mini choir, we had a bunch of horns.
Yeah.
I mean, there were times there were 100 people on stage, or 150. You know,
Wow.
it was a very special
Yeah.
series of events, and the musicians from David's band, the alumni that I had worked with for many, many years were there, and that was really, really cool.
Yeah, and I talked personally to Gail and Darcy, and to Sterling Campbell, and Adrian Ballou was there. And I mean, even Sting's son, Joe, of course, you know, people
He was
don't-
on the whole tour pretty
yeah,
much.
he was really cool.
He's a very good singer.
He is really good.
And he did a great job. And Adrian, of course,
Yeah.
we had never crossed paths, believe
really?
it or not. But I knew his playing and vice versa. And he's very, he has a smile that's very infectious on
Yes.
stage. And he kind of lights up the room in a very, I don't know what the word would be, just a very,
Enigmatic, maybe.
maybe, yeah. It's almost a little geeky.
Yeah,
But
you're
yet
right.
it's
you're right.
it's just the joy of the music. I think he loves playing so much, and he's not tired of playing, which sometimes you do get with older musicians. And he emanated a certain light that was really, really good, and I'm sure I'll be doing more things with him, you know.
Yeah, I noticed that too when I talked to him. Like, he reeked of geek.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I'd never seen him play with Bowie, but I saw him play with King Crimson and Frank Zappa, and just phenomenal. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
guitar player. I mean, just so he's one of those naturals.
He's natural, and he's also kind of like a scientist with his sounds and
Yeah.
what he does, you know. So
That's right.
it's
That's
great.
right.
So that was really fun.
And you got to work with some great singers too, like Gaby Moreno, and who's just
Gaby is amazing.
her voice. She can hit so many octaves.
The way she sang 5 Years and Rock and Roll Suicide, she's a big talent. I've done a bunch of projects with her, and I'm still doing more with her. So I'm really happy we met, you know.
Yeah.
And there were some other ones that were great. I mean, we must have, well, who did we have in New York? In Living Color.
You had them in New York. Wow.
We had them in New York.
Didn't Gary Oldman also?
Gary Oldman we
Yeah.
had in London, in Brixton.
Yeah.
He was great.
So
Living
did you play in Brixton area too, like where
Yeah.
Bowie's from?
And that's the name. That's the hall that we played at. Also, it's like a 5,000 seater, and that's where David was born, I think,
Yeah,
in that area.
yeah.
We also had the guy Rossdale. What's his name?
Gavin.
Gavin.
Rossdale.
Gavin.
He was married to Gwen Stefani.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, Bush used to open for us on tours in the 90s with Bowie when we were in Europe. So I
wow.
met him way back. He did a great job, and we had Kate Pearson in New York from the B-52s.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Excellent.
People were showing up all over the place, you know, in the last second.
Yeah.
It was a great experience and a nice way to celebrate David, you know, and
And you know, one thing that's really refreshing for me to sit there is like, you know, in more recent years going to concerts, like, I don't know what you've experienced, but you hear people talking, and it's kind of annoying when you're there to listen to music. And I noticed during that concert, a lot of people were intently listening and only applauding when it was, you know, finished.
well, that's
And
nice to
and
hear.
I was like, you know, that's the way it used to be. I like that.
Yeah.
You know, and because this is music that is timeless as far as I'm concerned, and one of a kind. Just going forward from there, I know that at the same place, you did other concerts too last year. You did a show with the Smashing Pumpkins there. That Ace
That was at the
Theater.
Ace Theater.
Oh, what a beautiful! I walked in there and I'm going like, wow, Mary Pickford's husband was the architect. Just this
that amazing?
magnificent architecture. It just blows you
That
away.
was my inspiration to do the little concert I did
Yeah.
there, that cancer benefit.
Yeah.
It was because I liked what I felt when I worked with Billy Corgan.
Yeah.
We did, I think, a few songs together, and we did Space Oddity.
Oh, that's great. That's
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah, with the Pumpkins. That was nice.
Yeah, very nice. And the Music Cares concert too. I mean
Which one?
the Music Cares concert that you did with the band that had Gaby in it, and
That had Gaby, and it had Holly. Who was,
Holly was also in the show.
and it had Brett Hoole. Both of those were on the Celebrating David Bowie, and we had what's her name? Jordis Unger.
Yes.
She was on The Voice and a bunch of those shows in the past. She had a very good voice.
It was. I mean, I'm glad you stuck in those little surprises because that really made it, you know, under pressure and imagine. What
Wasn't
a
that kinda
perfect
cool?
way to end. Yeah, that was great, fantastic, and a great cause, and just, you know, everything all put together there.
We'll probably do another one of those in Philadelphia
Oh, great.
in probably in May.
'Cause that's where the two doctors work at the Children's Hospital.
Those
there.
great doctors.
Yeah, really nice guys.
Wonderful guys. So we'll do probably one there.
Fantastic.
And, you know, you might even see some sort of another Celebrating David Bowie show up in January in Europe and maybe February and March in the States. We're putting possibly something together for that.
Oh, ongoing story. I love it.
It'll
I love
be
it.
different, but it'll be interesting and great, you know.
That's fantastic. Now let's do a little walk down memory lane again. And I brought a couple of things. I found this. I don't know where I bought it. It's a David Bowie story. It's an old, interesting paperback book. As you can see, the pages are, and it's about the early years of Bowie. You know, like before he really did music. He was, you know, he did mime and he did, you know, different kinds of things to experiment. You know, and of course he started with folk music, and it's interesting because there's a timeline in here of what went on in his life at that time, which is kind of interesting, and that you entered into it. You're not in the book, but you know, it ends with like Aladdin Sane and that
Goes
kind
that
of thing.
far, yeah.
We talked last time about how, you know, I guess the 1984 floor show, you said it never got filmed, but I would say I saw some of it on the Midnight Special on NBC.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah,
That's right.
because
That's
the
right.
Trogs are on there and Marianne Faithfull, and I saw that in that book, and I thought, oh yeah, I remember seeing that, and it was fantastic.
Marion was great.
Yeah.
Her and David, I think, when we did it in England, they did the Sonny and Cher song
Oh, that's right.
together.
That's right. I think I saw some footage of that. And see, that's the great thing about YouTube now is that we can go back and see all these great things. I was watching something last night with some BBC show. I think it was the reality tour, and you guys were doing a song from that album.
It was a great show.
Yeah. And
It was just in a room that had 200 seats, maybe
Yeah.
300 seats. I remember Lulu was there,
Yeah.
who I used to work with back in the
Yeah.
70s, and Russell Crowe was there,
Wow.
and Meg Ryan was there, and the band was in rare form,
Yes.
and they put out a CD of that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's a 3 CD set because he had done the BBC in the late 60s, and now
Right.
we did it again. So he those tracks are on there, and the tracks that we did it would have been around 2000.
Bowie won an award. It was on December 31st, I believe, 1973, because he actually had 5 albums in the charts at the same time for like 19 weeks.
Amazing.
So, you know, not too many people have done that. I mean, you know, that's on the level of the Beatles, you know, that
Yeah.
accomplished things like that. And then he, you know, had a lot of singles that really surprised people. I don't know, you've had a chance to reflect back, but we talked a little bit the last time. You know, I'm sure you had many conversations, you know, at dinner and on planes and limos and the back seat and, you know, and when you went to work on the Outside album, obviously you got to meet people like Brian Eno and Ruse Gabrels and incredible, you know, group of musicians.
Great musicians, yeah.
And great album, by the way. You're all over it.
One of the best albums.
You know what?
yeah.
I love the Architect's Eyes. I don't know what that.
It's
you know,
great.
I know. I love that, and your piano playing in that. And see, I'm a melody person. I really like melody, and Bowie is like on top of it there.
There's a musician who co-wrote the song Outside with David named Kevin Armstrong, and I'm actually playing 6 concerts with him the end of November, doing a very short Aladdin Sane Tour.
Wow.
We're testing it out in England.
Yes.
And it's Kevin's playing guitar, so he is a Bowie alumni, but we weren't there at the same time. He wasn't at those recording sessions. He also played on Dancing in the Streets with the video with Mick
Jagger.
Mick Jagger
Yeah.
and David, and it's the Iggy Pop band currently.
Yes.
They're backing me up as we do the complete Aladdin Sane album.
That's going to be
The
phenomenal.
last 6 days of November over there, which kind of should be a lot of fun. And then if it's successful, we'll bring it to the States and Japan and Australia and different places as the year unfolds.
I would love to see that, and I can never not see Aladdin Sane. I mean, I can watch you play that over and over and over because I know it's never exactly the same way twice, and I love that.
No. There's no way I
You
could
know,
do the same thing.
And I like being, you know, I like watching Zappa for that very same reason. 'Cause, you know, it's like when he would play, he'd never play the same
Never
song the
played
same
the
way
same.
twice, you know.
Anyone who has the real jazz sensibility tends to like to create in the moment.
Exactly.
We all have our licks and our vocabulary, so it can't be so far away from it. But the fact that it's fresh, for me, is what makes the music enjoyable.
Exactly.
In my younger years, it was very younger years, I would play written music, and that had its own joy. I can hardly do that now, including my own. So even if I'm reading my own music, I tend to change it as I'm reading it, because you feel differently at every given second, which is why the concept of my now music came about, which is how do you feel in that moment. Now, to be able to do that, you have to have done a lot of work early on, because you have to know that language
That's right.
inside and out. In my case, it was the language of the piano, as well as all my experiences with classical and all my experiences with jazz, and even my rock experiences.
That's right. Going back to being in the back of a limousine and all of that, last night I watched a movie called Bowie in Berlin. And I know that you never went to Berlin, but when you met Eno, obviously you saw the magic of the chemistry of those two guys working together, which is, besides, I can't say there's a favorite era of Bowie for me. I like them all. But there was something about the Berlin era that just really made me realize Bowie is so broad, in what he's open to doing, that and it was an interesting film. I don't know if you had a chance to see it. I highly recommend it. But
I'll check it out. I didn't see it.
And I wondered, if in the back seat of the car, or at dinner, Bowie ever talked to you about going to Berlin, because at the time he was here in L.A. He just finished Station to Station album, and he had a coke addiction, and there was a lot of things going on, and he just wanted to get out of here, basically, for a while. He and Iggy. And the film goes into that. Did he ever say anything to you about, his experiences there in the late 70s, revisiting them, because he was...
We never talked about that, interestingly enough.
Yeah.
I was playing jazz at that time with Stanley Clarke.
Yeah.
I wish that I had been on those albums, because those guys were very creative. They switched instruments and they did all sorts of wild stuff. Brian Eno is kind of another kind of genius. You have David's genius and you have Brian, and the two of them together, I mean, watching them work on the Outside album, and I'm playing this big 9-foot concert grand.
Yeah.
And right behind me is Brian with a little keyboard. It was an old Yamaha DX7, which we played in the early 80s, and this is mid-90s. And he's got all these little boxes. There was a little music store right next door to the studio. And every day he'd buy another box and connect it to the DX7, and I'd be playing all this crazy virtuosic stuff with the piano and big sound, and all of a sudden I'd be hearing in my headphones, beep, 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 beep. And I thought, this is a very interesting combination. I thought the phone was ringing in the studio. But, David and him knew how to take the highlights of what was best of those improvs, because we must have done 50 hours of improvisation. There's tapes that just never stop. We had two 24-track Sony machines connected, so it was 48 tracks, and we would just improvise for 2-3 hours straight every day for weeks.
Wow.
And then they put the album together from that material. We were supposed to do 3 albums. It was supposed to be a trilogy.
Oh, really?
Yeah. What happened is someone stole the tapes and they put out these bootlegs of all these improvs. It's on the internet somewhere.
Oh, wow.
So it took the life out of it for David. But Brian and David, a few months before David passed, had talked about maybe trying to do the Outside trilogy again, because now 20 years had passed, or 18 years. It was always on his mind, and Brian's too.
And it was, and I had a chance to read the booklet all the way through, but it's a story about a guy named Nathan Adler, right? And it's fascinating, that. And I do remember seeing you guys play on Saturday Night Live, and I think Heart's Filthy Lesson on that tour, and it was just phenomenal.
It was a great album. Heart's Filthy Lesson appears right at the end of the movie Seven.
Oh, really?
At the very end of the movie, as soon as it's over, it comes in, and that was a song I co-wrote with him with some of the other guys, and then the piano solo comes in within like about 45 seconds.
Yeah.
And seeing in a big movie theater, I got a big kick out of that.
Oh, I'm sure. That's fantastic.
And there was some other stuff. What was the name of that artist that a movie was done at? It was a black painter, and he died early on.
Yes, Basquiat.
Basquiat.
Yes, he played Andy Warhol in that
David
movie.
played Andy Warhol in that movie, and a lot of the music from Outside is in there.
Oh, is it really?
And specifically Small Plot of Land, which is really
right.
based around the piano and David.
That's right. I
It's
do
a
remember hearing that.
Wild improv.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll see like a royalty check for 4 cents come in from that.
Oh,
or
really?
8 cents.
Wow.
They're not.
Wow.
It's because it's a bit of a cult film, so not many people saw it. But we saw the opening of it, David and I, and it's a great film.
Yeah, I
and that
thought it was
music
great.
was in there. Also, there was a some remixes of stuff from the same album, I'm Deranged, and, which was on that album that Trent Reznor did for the movie Lost Highway with Robert Blake. And so a lot of David's stuff would end up in movies remixed or covers or his own version.
And and there's going to be a greater demand, and I think it's great that you're going out to, because this newer generation of kids that I meet, a lot of them, they love Bowie. They absolutely adore him. So what do you have coming down the pike? I know there's the Aladdin Sane Tour in Europe. What else can we expect?
Probably another Celebrating David Bowie,
Yeah.
January through March, and maybe next year again at the festivals. And I'm doing my normal local jazz concerts at different places.
Yeah.
I pop and do that. And I have a little duet with a doctor. We're called the Physician and the Musician.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Yeah,
Wow.
and he shows like videos of DNA and how the music affects it and changes it. He's brilliant. And his name is Dr. Barry Bittman. And then
Dr. Barry Bittman.
Dr. Barry Bittman, and he's from the East Coast. And then I'll play some piano stuff, and he actually invites the audience to sit around the piano at the end. I mean, it's a very
great.
impromptu. So we're doing something like that in the end of October. What else do I have going? Well, every day something else comes in. A few weeks ago, I played on a new album that'll be out for Perry Farrell.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
I played on his new album that was being produced by Tony Visconti. So that
is
was
it
a
really?
great experience.
So is Tony in town right now?
He's not anymore, but we were in the studio a few
Oh.
weeks ago.
Oh,
And I hadn't
wow.
worked with him for a while in the studio. This will be a great album. So there's a lot of things, again, because my life is kind of an improv, like my playing, out of nowhere things pop up. Like I'm going over later to see Iggy Pop. He's playing at Exposition today. There's a big festival this weekend, so I'm going to go see them because, like I said, that band with him is going to
Yeah.
be my band on Aladdin Sane Tour, so go say hello to the guys.
Oh, that's right. He's at the FYF festival.
That's right.
Is it? Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. That's I've never been to that, but that's great. That'd be
Yeah.
a great place for you guys to play next year.
Maybe next year, So David, has affected so many generations, and his music was so wide. He's kind of like, say, George Gershwin or Cole Porter, in that we'll have his repertoire of music for hundreds of years, and people will do million versions of covers like they did with Gershwin and Jerome Kern and Rodgers and Hammerstein. The difference with him, he was also an amazing performer. Those
Yes.
other people were composers and lyricists. He was both. So I never thought of that thought when he was alive, because I only would work with him when he was alive. I didn't do cover bands or anything of that nature.
Yeah.
Now that he's passed, I'm finding a million ways to make his music live through my interpretation, and millions of other people literally are doing similar things. I'll probably do a solo album
Fantastic.
of some of my favorite vocalists with just piano
Oh, that's
doing
great.
David songs. So that's something I have planned.
That's fantastic. And
And,
let's finish up with some more now music. And in closing, Dave, Mike does have a book called Bowie's Piano Man, right?
Yes, and actually in somewhere between January and March of 2018, the new version's coming
Oh, is
out,
it?
which has another 100 pages since David passed.
Oh,
So I
really?
had a lot more to say,
Oh,
plus
excellent.
a lot more interviews from many people, And
There's a great book called David Bowie, The Portrait of David.
yeah,
That's out as well. Or Portrait
There's-
of Bowie, I should say.
I'm still learning about him as an artist,
Yeah.
almost as a fan,
Yeah.
because when you're working with him, you can't be a fan. He's looking to you for input and co-creativity. But since he's passed, I'm finding so much about him that I didn't know.
Yes.
Not only recordings and obscure things that I did with him or I wasn't playing on,
Yeah.
and just his insight. The thing that's most impressive, because since I saw you I've done about 150 interviews, and
Wow.
documentaries, and TV and radio, and everybody seems to say the same thing
Yeah.
in terms of all the artists that I work with on the Celebrating David Bowie tour. All of them seem to say that he influenced so many generations because I think he gave people permission to experiment and do what they wanted. I think that's what he did that your normal rock musician doesn't do. So that's coming from the
Yeah.
viewpoint, I would say, of a Renaissance type of man.
Totally.
So,
And on that, we'll have to wrap it up. But thank you so much, Mike. It's great as
My
always.
pleasure. My pleasure.
And the conversation continues, and look forward to more.
We'll do a part 3
Now
next
music.
year.
Absolutely. Excellent.